Okay. Go to iLearn. You'll be going through Chapter 1 lab. You're going to have to complete this activity. Just read it page by page by page. It has all your instructions, and then the Chapter 1 lab submission should become available for you. All you have to do once when you're in here is just submit the PDF that you create for that lab, and you will have until next Friday to get it done. It will be due right at the start of class. In addition to the Chapter 1 lab, you guys are going to have the Chapter 2 pre-lab to do, which is just a little free response activity, kind of similar to the video I showed you guys last week. Just a little exercise to make sure you guys are getting used to the whole being very explicit thing, because that's what coding's all about. In addition to that, today you guys start working on the milestone 0 for the game project overview. So let's talk a little bit about that first before we go too deep into everything else. What you guys are going to do for this class is you're going to build a text-based dungeon crawler, as I said. By the way, I don't have the chat open, so if you guys have questions, please unmute yourselves and talk. I won't be checking the chat all that much. You guys are going to build a text-based dungeon crawler. This is going to be a semester-long endeavor. You're going to have multiple milestones throughout. You're going to have, just a quick overview, you will have milestone 0, which you get today. You have, I think, like 4 weeks to work on that. We'll talk more about what milestone 0 is. It's basically just planning everything. Milestone 1 is your first actual coding. Milestone 2 is you're going to be creating the map for the game. And then milestone 3, you put everything together and get it ready for an alpha release. You're going to be putting a lot of the skills you guys learn in 210, 211 to use. And yeah, for those who might not know what a dungeon crawler is basically a game where you have a dungeon, some kind of level place where you have to start from point A and make your way all the way to point B at the finish. And there's usually monsters to fight along the way, puzzles, traps, etc. Stuff like that are going to slow you down and pose a challenge to you. Once when you reach the end, you win. Text-based means what it sounds like. There's no graphical interface. You're not going to have like actual graphical sprites or characters. It's all going to be in text to tell the user, hey, this is the environment you're in. This is what you see. This is what there is, etc., etc.
So this is like a Zork thing?
Yeah. I don't have an example for you guys today. I'll have one ready hopefully before you guys start coding your projects, but really at this point it's more thinking abstractly about the game and being kind of more intuitive with that. So what you guys are going to learn in this, the biggest thing is you're going to learn about object-oriented programming. There's a lot of stuff in this that you guys will be able to put object-oriented programming to use. You're going to create test cases to ensure that little segments of your code work. That's a super important skill to have as a developer. When you're working on a project, usually it's a big project and there's multiple pieces. So understanding how to isolate these pieces and test them are going to be super important. You're going to learn how to, like I talked about last week, leverage resources online. Google. There's going to be a lot of stuff that you just don't know how to do because it's very unique to your thing, and you're going to have to learn how to identify the more general thing of what you're doing and Google that and try to apply what other people have said to your project. And hopefully at the end of this, you're going to be more motivated to just work on your own projects. One thing I will say about my SF State career, now that I'm here kind of the last semester as a student here, there are certain classes at SF State that maybe they changed it for you guys, but when I took them, it was good. Like I learned stuff, but compared to what what I heard about other students at other universities did, I wish that our classes had done more. Definitely a lot of stuff that was a little bit lacking, that I thought was a bit lacking, that I'm kind of seeing now that I'm in the job search. I'm having to do a lot of going back and relearning that kind of stuff. But if you guys keep doing projects, you'll keep your skills sharp. You'll keep pushing yourselves beyond what you learn in class, and you'll have a lot of cool stuff to put on your resume that'll make you stand out when you go to apply for jobs. So I'm hoping that starting out with something like this will motivate you guys early on, so you start building earlier on. So for your game requirements, there's 3 basic requirements. 1, your dungeon needs to have at least 5 rooms. You can have more, but it needs at least 5 rooms with a designated entry and exit point. Your game should have some kind of turn-based combat system. How you do that is up to you, whether it's with resources or with you have different kinds of attacks that are good against different kinds of enemies, what have you. It's up for you to describe, for you to come up with, and then there should be interactable objects in every single room. An interactable object could simply be, hey, if you pick this up, you get back 5 health. Some kind of thing in there that the user can interact with. Here's the different milestones that you guys are going to have to do. I already talked about this at the beginning. Good luck, have fun. So for milestone 0 specifically, let's go read the project sheet about that. You guys are going to basically come up with a map. So that's like the first thing you're going to come up with, a map for your dungeon. I recommend using this tool, Dungeon Generator. This is for Dungeons and Dragons. And another point, because you're doing a text-based dungeon crawler, it's going to feel a lot like you're developing a Dungeons and Dragons game, because as you describe the room, it's going to be very similar to the way, like, say your story master in a D&D game might be describing stuff to you, because you don't have any visual medium to show the room. It's up to you to describe it. So you can come over here and click this random or construct button, and it'll construct a random dungeon. Now, I highly encourage you guys to follow this kind of format for your dungeons. You'll notice that there's no diagonals, there's no round stuff. That's going to be very important, because when you design your map, you're going to do it in a 2-dimensional grid, kind of like this. So being able to say, hey, in this square there's a room, in this square there's a hallway, in this square there's a room, etc. Like stuff like that is going to be really, really helpful for you guys. There's multiple ways that you could do designing the map, but you're going to be using that grid to help you. So you don't have to make it this big. You could literally just take, hey, I'm going to just make it this segment of the map, and that'll be my rooms. And what's neat about it is in some of these rooms, if you hover over it, like here, there's some monsters in here that it's generated for us. It could help give you ideas of what to put in your rooms. You could just like mix and match and combine rooms together. But ideally, the main idea is you build your map in a way that's kind of like this. There's hallways of whatever size you want them to be. There's rooms of whatever size you want them to be. Think about dimensions. I highly encourage you guys to use grid paper when drawing out your maps. Really just think about what the aesthetics of the map are going to be, how the room is laid out, where there's fights, is there a boss fight, what sort of goodies, treasures, traps, etc. are waiting for around every corner. Really just start there with the map. After you've done the map, think about your turn-based combat. Oh, and I didn't finish writing this in. Whoops. I'll put some more details in there. I could have sworn I finished writing this up. Sorry. Turn-based combat. You have to kind of think about what your game's combat is going to be like. You can't just have a game where you get into a combat encounter and the game automatically resolves it. Like, oh, you found a monster. Like, here's all the steps of what happened in the fight, and the fight's over. That's not an interactive game. That's just a simulation. That's nothing. The player's going to be really bored if your game is like that. So think about what kind of combat system do you want to make. Are there going to be stats for your players? Are there going to be stats for your monsters? How do these stats relate? You can think about games like Fallout, again, Dungeons and Dragons. Hell, even Cyberpunk has stats that correlate to different things that your character can do. The best way to think about it from a game design perspective is think about the features of a person, divide those to their physical attributes and their mental attributes. And usually from there, you can kind of separate out everything, like their physical attributes. There's their agility, there's their strength, there's their constitution, like how much health they might have, how durable they are. For their mental, there might be like their intelligence, their reaction, whatever stats you want to put in. Just kind of think about those. That's kind of it. For number 3, your game must have interactable objects. Really, again, going back to this dungeon, that's a good way to think about it, because if you, at the bottom here, it has like a list of what's in every single map or what's in every single room. Like, for instance, here, like, there's a trap in this one room. There's a trap in here. In other rooms, there might be treasure. Let's search for treasure. Yeah, like, see, there's hidden treasure in this room. Just kind of these kinds of things. What are some interactable objects? You can even have like just one health potion in the corner. Like, you're, as your character's walking around, maybe they find health potions. Maybe they find an item that gives them a +1 to one of their stats or something to make them stronger. Maybe they find a new weapon that makes them do more damage. Whatever you want it to be. Get creative with it and just really think about what you want in your dungeon. Now, when it comes to the combat, I would prefer you to think more like Pokemon or old school Final Fantasy than more like modern games, where there's mechanics that you have to roll out of the way of, or there's fire coming around that you have to dodge, etc. You can't really do that in a text-based game. So it's going to be more about choosing your turn, what ability you're going to do, thinking about what kind of monster you're up against, and what you have in your arsenal that's going to be good against that kind of opponent. Any questions so far on the Milestone 0?
So are we just kind of turning in our plan, like
Yes.
on a doc or something?
Yes.
Just write on the doc and just answer all the questions, kind of?
Yeah.
Right.
So kind of relating back to coding, when you're building something in code, the longest time of your development cycle should be in the planning. Before you write any code, you should really sit down with like a pen and paper or open up a doc, write out what the requirements of the project are, how you're going to fulfill them, what you plan to do, what technologies you'll employ, what kind of strategies you might have, etc. You should really, really just sit down and plan out what this thing you're going to build is going to be like. And then at the end of it, you're going to submit that document to me, and that document's going to give me a good idea of what features you're going to have, you're going to try to deliver. Now, Milestone 0 is not a concrete contract. Like, just because you come up with an idea in Milestone 0 doesn't mean it needs to be in your final game. If, as you're developing, you guys realize that, oh, shoot, I can't have this, then you're going to want to document that somewhere that, hey, I have to drop this feature. You guys will be keeping a dev diary once when you start coding, and we'll talk more about that once when I assign Milestone 0, or Milestone 1, excuse me. But once when you've released your doc and you start like actually writing the code, you guys will be keeping documentation of features you decide to drop, or maybe features you decided to add later on that you thought would make the game better that came up as you were coding, whatever the case might be. And then Milestone 3, before you start coding that, you're going to send me a final document of like, hey, this is my game. This is what my game is going to be. And if any of your features in that document aren't in the final game, you're going to lose points. So, Chapter 1 Lab. How many of you here have not yet...
I still had a question.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, is it okay to use procedural generation for like your map layout, or is that no for this project?
If you can do that, go for it.
Okay.
I'm out of curiosity, what's your coding experience?
So I have some previous coding experience on the hows to code, but not the whys of coding. So some of the more, like, I get the, like,
okay.
If you give me a project and tell me to code it, I can do it. The problem is I don't know all of the background information for, like, why a float's a float, why a double's a double, all that stuff, because
Okay.
my previous school wasn't great with that. They were like, here's a project, go do it.
Okay. I mean,
it was in
sure.
Python, so it's a little different, but
Sure. I mean, that's something that'll come up later. You could definitely put it into your project sheet now. If you can make it so that at the start of the game,
yeah,
rather than procedurally generating, I think what you need to say is randomly generated. So instead of like
Yeah.
hard defining a map, you're going to write code that generates some kind of 5-room layout, a minimum 5-room layout, and the player goes into it. That's totally fine.
Okay.
It's once when you get to the milestones and there are certain limitations on this game, and they're there because I just need you guys to be working the specific things that you're learning at the time. Ideally, if I could have you guys run this game, build this game my way, you'd be using classes from the get-go, but I've had to modify stuff slightly because you don't learn about objects and classes till near the end of the semester. So there's going to be...
I can see why that would be a problem.
Yeah, you're going to have to do some pretty janky stuff. So
yeah. If that's how we're doing this, I'll pull back on that. I just wasn't sure because I was thinking.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, if you could have done it with trees and nodes, then yes, go for it. Like, that would be a great...
Well, I haven't actually done anything with trees and nodes. I was going to literally just have it so once it started up the game, it would... I was going to try to convert a maze builder program I built at my old school to build out the map and then use that to pretty much...
You could probably use that, yeah.
that.
I'll take a look at that
Yeah.
when we come to milestone 2, where you have to actually build the map.
It's all coded in Python, so it's basically just a reference node at this point.
That's fine. That's fine.
Well, I'll see if I can translate it.
Yeah. We'll figure something out about that. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Nope. Okay. If there's no other questions, I am gonna start going over this. Basically, so before we get started with any of this, I just want to talk a little bit about the big picture, so you guys understand the specifics of what you're doing and why you're doing it. An IDE, like it says in here, is an integrated development environment. What that basically means is a development environment can be anything as simple as Notepad. It's just some kind of environment that you have for yourself that you can write and develop software in. Integrated development environments usually have tools in there, various kinds of tools like an interpreter, a debugger, multiple other tools integrated in one development environment for your development pleasure. So for instance, let me turn them over real quick. With IntelliJ, there's a bunch of different tools, but if I really wanted to, I could, CD desktop, school, I could develop everything right here in my terminal. I could say vi hello world.java and say, public static or public class hello world, public static void main string args, system out println hello world. And then I could say Java, hello world, Java, and bam, I ran my program. Now, compared to, let's say I did that in IntelliJ, it's gonna, you're gonna see why it's gonna be much simpler and much more intuitive. I'm just gonna say create a new project. We'll name it hello world, put it in my CSC 211 folder, and I'm just gonna, here we go in the source file. Create a new Java class, world. Public static void main string args. There we go. It was much faster, and I don't have to go anywhere else. I can just run my program right here. Say add configurations. Application, main class, hello world, and we run it. And it builds it, runs it all within this environment. I don't need to use terminal command line code to, or command line commands to compile it for me. It just does it all on its own over here. And this is more or less the long and short of what you guys are going to be doing. Then you're going to take a screenshot and send it in. You'll follow along these instructions. It's going to tell you what to do. It's going to be all the way from like actually setting up your license and all that. to making a new project. Then it's going to have you do some basic hello world stuff once when you have it all set up. And then you're going to be good to go. Now, some quick debugging stuff. To make Java work on your computer, you need a few things. Some kind of development environment. Again, the development environment can be something as simple as Notepad. But then you also need the Java virtual machine and the Java compiler. The compiler takes your Java code, translates it into Java virtual machine code, and the Java virtual machine is what actually reads the code. So the Java compiler, if you go in your terminal and type Java C version, it'll tell you what version Java compiler you have. I personally have version 12. I might update it, I might not. I know in the newest version of Java, they changed how they do switch statements, which when I ran some students' code, it caused issues because they were using the new syntax that only exists in the newest Java, and I don't have the newest Java. When you can say Java version, and it'll tell you what version of the Java virtual machine you have. And you get all this stuff if you just go to Google and say Java or JVM download, or Java SDK, software development kit download. You go to the Oracle website, and they're going to have the newest JDK download. And I believe when you get the newest version, it comes with the JVM and the JDK. They should both be in this in the same file. But if they're not, like let's say you type Java C single version, and then it says command not recognized, that means you don't have the Java compiler installed on your computer, and you're going to have to go down somewhere, find it, and download it. IntelliJ will not work properly unless you have both of these installed and running. If either of these things is missing, IntelliJ is going to give you some really weird errors. So you really have to make sure that you got those installed. And that's kind of more or less it. I'm going to end the recording there.